Hello and welcome. My name is Lexi Jong and here I like to talk about luxury beauty, and today we are taking a look at the newest Sonia G brush. This is the Jumbo Bronzer and it is joining the Sky collection. So thank you so much to Sonia G and Beautylish for sending this to me, and it is a stunning bronzer brush. So we're going to look at a bunch of comparisons so you can see whether this is something you need in your collection. And first, let's just go over a few details about this brush. You can see here that we have dyed Psycho goat hair, so this is going to be soft. It is not going to be as soft as some of the previously released dyed Psycho goat hair brushes that Sonia G has in her collections, and that is because of this length of hair. These are very, very long hair lengths, so the quality is not the same as it was several years ago. And it's continuing to decrease and getting harder and harder to source the hairs. So for that reason, this brush is not limited edition, but yet it's not also considered permanent because it's all going to be dependent on the supply. So if this is a brush that you're interested in, I would definitely pick it up now during the launch and not take my chances, because once this sells out, yes, Sonia G would like to replenish the supply, but it will be dependent upon the supplies available, and the quality that is available in the future may not be the same quality that we have here today. So this is going to be very soft, and you can see here how the fibers bend. This is unique because it's an airy brush, but yet there's also a firmness to it. So it's kind of got the best of both worlds. So just like the Sky series, we have the ombre blue handle, and this handle is going to be a little bit thicker than the Niji Pro, which is the bronzer brush that was just recently released as well. And this one is a mix of fibers here. And you can see that this is going to be a bit of a firmer brush. And if you look at these two heads here, not only do we have shorter hair lengths in the Niji Pro, but if you look at how these actually, increase in length going up, we have a similar shape, but this gradation is going to be a little bit more gradual, whereas we have the longer hairs here, and this is where it starts to curve here. So slightly different curvature on the two of these. You can see that the Niji Pro has more of a pinched ferrule here, which kind of presses this in a little bit more, giving you a firmer, more dense application. This is still a pinched ferrule to give you some firmness and control, but it's a little bit airier and softer, partly due to the length of the hairs. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this brush while we look at some demos of this. This brush is called the Jumbo Bronzer, but it's designed for pretty much a variety of face products. It doesn't have to be just for bronzer. I am somebody who does not wear bronzer every day. I wear it more sparingly. And so for me, this brush is one that I would use for a variety of face products. And actually, I really like it for, personally, I like to wash my brushes fairly frequently compared to most people. So if I can get away with using one brush for all of my face products, I will do that. So this is kind of what I love about this brush. It's a jack of all trades, depending on what products you're using. So we're looking at it here for using it with setting powder. You can see it applies a setting powder very nicely. Now, this is going to be great for like loose powders. It also works for pressed powders, but usually for a pressed powder, I prefer something that's just a little bit firmer. So for my preference, I really like the Jumbo Bronzer brush to brush on some loose powder. I think it works perfectly for that. Gives you a nice soft dusting of that. Moving on, we are also using it for one of my favorite products. It's technically a blush, but I like to use it as a base to cheek products. So this is the Chanel Blush Comet in Pêche Cosmique. So it's technically a very, very soft peach shade, but really it just gives you a little bit of subtle radiance on your cheeks. And I like to put this on and then top that with blush or bronzer. So we're going to apply it with that, and you can see it gives you a very soft wash of color here, just a little hint of that without being overpowering. So it goes on beautifully. If you are looking for something to cover the entire cheek area in one swipe, this brush is great for that. Moving on to our bronzer application, there are a couple ways that you can use this brush. So I used it here to apply the bronzer primarily more as like cheek color, which is very common in more like European countries and so forth. Here in the US, a lot of people will also use it more in like contour areas. If you want to use it that way, I would definitely recommend using the narrow angle of the brush, kind of cutting it in there and then turning it to kind of buff that out a little bit. But if you want to use it more as a cheek color, then I recommend using the wider portion of the brush like I do in the demo here and applying it that way. And it gives you just like this beautiful wash. It looks very sun-kissed. And then if you are moving the bronzer around the contours of your face and so forth, your jawline, forehead, and so forth, I would use the more narrow portion of this for that. And I think this shape works beautifully. One of the best things about this brush is how the brush hair lengths are, the gradation of them. I think that is what really gives you that perfect blend of firmness and airiness, depending on how you turn that brush and how much, like how firmly you press it to your skin. Now for blush, this brush is going to be a little large for blush for me for the most part. However, sometimes I like to use a very light, soft blush to get like a very soft kind of wash of color on the cheeks. And in that case, this brush is great for that. But I wanted to show you here in the demo how you can also use it with something a little bit more vibrant. So in this case, I'm using the Chanel Rose Ruben blush. This is number 602. And I'm doing more of a dabbing motion to kind of pat the color onto the apples of the cheeks. And then afterwards, just kind of fanning that into the bronzer a little bit. So I just get a little punch of color there. Now, if I were just doing blush on my cheeks and I wanted to go with a more vibrant color, personally, this brush is too big for me for that. Some people may like that, but for light colored blushes on me, this is a great brush for that. And then following up with finishing powder, again, I personally prefer this brush for loose powders, so I'm using it with the Guerlain Meteorites, which, although not technically a loose powder, when you run your brush over the pearls, it kind of acts more like a loose powder, and it goes on very softly and gently. So you can see in the demo here what that looks like with application. This brush, if you are familiar with the Guerlain Meteorites, if you buff them into your face with something very dense, you get this really beautiful sheen. If you put them on with something light and airy, it's a little bit more of a powdery look. It doesn't look quite as special. This brush kind of gives you something in the middle. And another brush from Sonia G that I really like for the meteorites that give you this same effect with the meteorites would be the Master Face from Sonia G. So if you're familiar with that one, if you've used that with Guerlain Meteorites, these are going to have the same appearance for the finished product. But this is a little bit larger, a little bit wider because the Master Face is a dome-shaped brush. So this will, get the job done a little bit faster. All right, so I hope the demos were helpful. Overall, I have to say I really love the way this brush performs. And for me, if we're looking between the Jumbo Bronzer and the Niji Pro, which one would be my preference for bronzers? It would actually be the Jumbo Bronzer because, again, I'm not somebody who wears bronzer every day religiously. This is going to be a little bit more versatile, and I like the airiness of it. So this is going to be more dense. This is great for like contour and everything, or anything you want to kind of buff in. So this is definitely one that I will still use frequently. But for, any sort of like soft light application, I think this is going to be a better brush for that. So again, here is just a comparison of what they look like. Let me just try to line up the ferrules here and notice that the Niji Pro, which by the way is also known as the rainbow brush, you have kind of this arch ferrule versus a flat one here. This allows you to get even more firmness right here in the center of the brush than you do on the sides, because you're essentially making these hairs a little bit shorter. So this is going to definitely give you more control than the Jumbo Bronzer brush. Kind of different though. Just some quick looks at other Sonia G. We've got the Master Face here, which, as I mentioned, the way this one performs with the Guerlain meteorites, they're going to give you a very similar look on the skin. Overall, this is going to be an airier brush than the Master Face for other products, but I do think that this excels more with bronzer and you know, some of those things, whereas this is going to give you more of a buffing action. So still a complete favorite for mine. I just hope that you can see the differences in how these will perform. And just real quickly, just so you can see how the Niji Pro kind of bends compared to the Jumbo Bronzer. Another Sonia G, this is the Face Pro. This is angled, but I wanted to share this one because look at the lengths of the hairs. They are almost the same at the highest point. The Jumbo Bronzer is still just slightly longer. And you can see this brush is also a really great one for bronzer. This is going to give you kind of like a really nice appearance there as well. But this is one that you really want to use mostly in this direction. When you go in this direction, it's going to, you know, give you a different kind of control here. So this is really intended to go like this or like this. Whereas the Jumbo Bronzer, you've got just a little bit more even versatility. So I would say when you're putting bronzer on with these, this is still going to give you a little bit more firmness than the Jumbo Bronzer. Now, another one from Sonia G, the last one I want to compare from Sonia G, this is part of the Hinoki set. The Hinoki set comes with this brush as well as this angled one here. So those can only be purchased as a set. But this one here is going to be the larger of the two. This is very, very special. I have a video on this. I'll leave this link down below. But look at this. You can see it's going to be significantly smaller, but they do have a similar shape. This shape is actually more similar to the Niji Pro, but smaller. So you can see you've got the arch ferrule. You have kind of the same shape here as well. And this is going to be just a little bit denser, but these hairs are going to be softer. So the way that these will work on the face are going to be more similar still than it is with the Niji Pro, because this softness of these hairs will give you a softer application, a little bit less pickup compared to the Niji Pro. Now, another new brush, and I haven't had the chance to introduce this yet. This is from Aikido. And I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, but this is the Goldfish powder brush, and it actually comes with either a silver ferrule or a gold ferrule. You can choose. I chose the silver here. Look at this beautiful artwork on here, and it's just stunning. So I wanted to compare this. This is a longer brush. You can see that they both have flatness at the top, but notice the curvature here is going to be more gradual with the Sonia G. And the Sonia G is not going to be quite as loose. So this here is specifically intended for like loose powders and so forth versus the Niji Pro. I'm sorry, versus the Jumbo Bronzer, which is going to be a little bit firmer, a little bit more versatile. Now let's also take a look at a couple of the Chikuhodo FO brushes. This is the FO1. This is the FO9. So this was the original powder brush, and they just recently released FO9 being a little bit bigger. These are both powder brushes. Let's start with the FO1. You can see it's going to be significantly smaller. The hair lengths are about the same though, but this is going to be a lot more narrow, and it does not have that pinch ferrule. So it's more of an oval ferrule here. This is going to be a light and airy brush. This is silver fox hair, so the fibers themselves are incredibly soft. Now the FO9, you can see the hairs are slightly longer. Again, you've got more of that oval ferrule. It's not pinched like it is on the Jumbo Bronzer. And you can see here that the Jumbo Bronzer is going to be a little bit wider. But look how light and fluffy and airy this is. This is great for loose powder, whereas this can be a little bit more versatile. You have a little bit more firmness, a little bit more control over this, whereas the FO brush is a little bit more limited in what it's going to excel at. Next, let's take a look at the Chikuhodo T1 brush. So this is a powder brush, but it's large. So I wanted to compare it here. Notice we do have an oval ferrule here. This is going to be light and airy. This is undyed goat hair. It's not going to be as soft as that in the Jumbo bronzer here. And you've got an oval ferrule, but it's almost round. So you can see that this is going to be more multi-directional, whereas this, you want to go like this or like this, but you know, you're not really doing as much of a twirling motion like you would with something like the T1. This is going to be a little bit, again, airier, so you're looking at it excelling more with loose powders. And my last Chikuhodo brush to compare right now is the KZ1. This is not available. It is one of my all-time favorite brushes. We do have, again, an oval ferrule just like in the T1. It's almost round. And notice this here, the fibers are slightly longer in the Chikuhodo, but overall it is a smaller brush. It's more round. And this is, again, going to give you more of this swirling kind of effect versus the more directional firmness that you get with the Jumbo bronzer. Next, let's take a look at a couple Rephr brushes. Notice the shape here looks very, very similar. This is the Rephr 22. I actually have one of the first ones that came out, which has the P on it because it was still like a prototype at the time. And you can see here that the shape is very, very similar. These are both similar to the Tom Ford bronzer brush. Notice the Rephr is going to be a little bit wider, a little bit thicker here than the Sonia G. And you can see that, look at how they splay out. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit wider. It has more hairs. There's actually a little bit less fanning out from the ferrule comparatively with the Sonia G here. But notice the shape, the gradation here is going to be fairly similar, except when you're looking this way, you can see that this is a little bit sharper and the Sonia G is a little bit rounder. So this is how the Rephr is going to go. This is just a little bit big for me for bronzer. I use it for a powder brush, but this being also a little bit wider makes it a little bit less versatile for me because I prefer slightly smaller brushes. A lot of people love this for bronzer. If you love this for bronzer, you will probably love this for bronzer as well. I think they are similar in width and size. Do you need to have both? You know, that's really going to be a personal decision. Softness wise, the Sonia G is going to be a little bit softer than the undyed goat hair here from Rephr. But I do think that this just feels a little bit different. It's hard to explain, but when you put this on, because this is so wide, you don't really feel it being quite as directional as it is. So when you go like this, you feel all the fibers, but you feel all of the ends kind of at the same time. Whereas on this, it's kind of like more of a sweeping motion. I wish I had the words to describe it, but it's almost as though all of these are flattening at the same time. So it's very, very smooth. Whereas with this, you kind of feel like if you were taking a stack of papers and flipping it. Well, I don't have a pad of paper here, but if you had a pad of paper and you're doing, you know, like a flip book where you go like that, you can feel the different hair lengths going along your skin here. Whereas this actually feels like they're all going at one time. And I think a lot of that has to do with how this is going to be a little bit more narrow and the dyed goat hair making the fibers just a little bit softer than the undyed goat hair. I also wanted to compare it with the Rephr 24. This is like the mini, the baby sister of the 22. I use the 24 more often than the 22. This is one of my absolute favorite bronzer brushes. I think it's a great size here. This is going to be more dense though. Look at this. You can see how dense this is. This is also great for blush and cream products, which you cannot use the Jumbo bronzer for. So I find these to be different. This is definitely going to be more dense. You're going to have more firmness, more control with this. This is going to be better for a variety of face products. And my last comparison here is the Esom V49. This is a synthetic brush, and I love the Esom V series. This is one of my favorite synthetic series. So if you are looking for synthetic brushes, this is a great one. Notice the shape is a little similar. You know, you kind of have the same shape here, but this is going to have sharper angles here. You still have the pinch ferrule. This is significantly smaller overall than the Jumbo bronzer. And yeah, this, because it is synthetic, the synthetic fibers are a little bit airier here. You don't have that firmness, that control that you get with this. So this is going to perform like something much airier, and it's great for like a powder bronzer and so forth. This actually performs really well for a wide variety of cheek products also. So I think it's a good synthetic option, but it's going to be significantly smaller. So those are all of my comparisons with the Jumbo bronzer. Now, do you need this brush? I think that's really going to depend on what you have in your collection and what types of brushes you like. If you are somebody who prefers smaller face brushes, this is probably going to be too large for you. However, if you like smaller face brushes, but you are looking for a large fluffy brush for like setting powder and things like that, this could still be an option then. But you know, in that case, you're looking at this more for like powder and less for bronzer if you prefer smaller brushes. Now, I know a lot of people love large brushes, particularly for cheek products like bronzer and blush. I think this is a great brush for that. And I love the way this feels on the skin. Again, if you have the Niji Pro, which is a great brush, I think that is going to be a little bit more firm. And that's going to give you, you know, you can like buff things out more and feather things out more, but you can get a more targeted application with that than you do with the Jumbo bronzer. The Jumbo bronzer is going to give you more of that softer, airier finish, and it's going to work great with a wide variety of face products. So I'm very, very happy to have this in my collection. It is a brush that I would purchase myself, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to give everybody a shot to pick one up first, but if it's still available on Wednesday, I am ordering one of these myself. I try not to order something, you know, if I already have one for something that's limited edition. I don't want to take it from everybody who hasn't had that opportunity yet. But if it doesn't sell out right away, I'm definitely getting a second one because I really love this brush. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. And unfortunately, I know a lot of people are going to ask about the Tom Ford bronzer brush. I don't have that one, but I wish I did. So thank you so much, and I will see you very soon. Have a great day and happy shopping.